the last lecture of our series. It seemed like it went so fast. I want to thank you so much for your attendance, and I hope that you guys will be able to come and visit us and be with us for the fall when we do Adult Faith Formation, run by Pastor Katie. If you haven't done it before, it's a lot of fun, and you really enjoy it. So I'm going to put a plug in for the Faith Formation adult group, that will start in the fall. I want to thank my presenters, who helped with this, and I especially want to thank Crystal for doing all the audio visuals. And as you know, today is Pentecost Sunday. I see a lot of red, and I hope that you'll stay for service because there's something special that's going to happen in service today. And then I hope that you all stay for the pancake breakfast because the celebration will continue down in Lundin Hall with the pancake breakfast. So today it's my pleasure, we have Rachel Gambone. She put together a really nice presentation about how you organize documents and how you store them. And this is a nice wrap-up and a conclusion. It's an overlap of previous presentations about documentation, but Rachel's going to pull it all together and put it in one place, and she has a really nice checklist that she has in a handout for you. And then after Rachel's finished, Pastor Katie is going to do the series wrap-up, and she's going to talk about, the end of life from a pastor's perspective. So again, I want to thank you for your 7 weeks of being here, and I'm just thrilled with the attendance that we've had. And just a word, if you have any other suggestions of any presentations that you'd like to hear in the future, let one of the staff members know, because this is how we get ideas and how we can think about putting other presentations together. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. You'll see on the handout that on one side is an outline of what we'll be covering this morning, just in the next 10 minutes. And on the reverse side of the handout, there's a checklist of documents for you to look at. Let's look at the outline for just a moment to identify what we consider to be vital documents. In a sentence, vital documents are ones that will give your loved ones clear statements of what your wishes are and will give them the information necessary to carry out those wishes and to manage your affairs. So that means that some of these vital documents are the big ones that our presenters have shared with us over the last 6 weeks. Powers of attorney, last wills and testament, living wills, and so on. But you'll also notice there are some more everyday kinds of documents. So let's take a look at that list. There are 5 categories: personal documents, medical, financial, estate, and property. Under the personal, there are things like children and guardianship, life passages like birth certificates, adoptions, marriage, divorce, annulments, and separations. Others who depend on me if you're a caregiver. Secured places and passwords, and we'll be talking more about that shortly. Military records, citizenship, passports, Social Security, and so on. You've already heard a great deal about the medical kinds of records, such as health insurance, organ or body donation, and health care directives. Under the financial, you heard a great deal about durable powers of attorney for finance. We should also think about insurance policies, bank and brokerage statements, stock certificates and bonds, tax records, and so on. We heard about last wills and testaments in your estate care. You also want to think about your burial and cremation wishes and documentation for that, your funeral or memorial plans that Pastor Katie will be happy to help you put together. Under property, you want to think about real estate deeds, marital property, mortgages and leased property, and car titles. So let's think about how this kind of documentation will help you carry out your wishes. Say that you want to give your grandchild your car in your last will and testament. So in order for that wish to be carried out, you need to make sure that you have your car title available to your grandchild, and you need to have the insurance records to carry out that wish. Say that after you pass, your spouse decides to downsize and move into smaller living accommodations. That means you have to have your mortgage available, all of your tax records available, and all of the utility records and insurance papers available for your spouse to sell your home and carry out that move. This is an example of why these smaller everyday records need to be included in your management of your vital records. By managing all of these records and having them organized in one place, that means you are giving your loved ones a gift. You are reducing the burden on them after you're gone. That means that when you are gone, while they are in a state of grief, they will not have to try to find everything. You will have it all in one place for them, and you will give them one last gift. Have any of you had the experience of knowing someone who has had a loved one passed and they are faced with the difficulty of trying to find things? I know I have. Have any of you had that as well? It's dreadful. It's difficult. And I know this might seem like a small thing, but this is actually quite a big deal. So while we've heard for the past few weeks about all these important things that we can get together for our loved ones, this one last step of putting them into one place and of letting our loved ones know where they are is just as important as preparing those documents. And I promise you, this can be an easy thing to do. So in these next few minutes, think of this as your superpower. You're putting these things together to make life easy for your family. So all of the things that we've been doing while we're alive to make life easy for our loved ones, this is one more thing we can do. So this is your superpower. Embrace it. And this talk will make it just a little bit easier for you. By putting these things together, you not only will make things easier for loved ones, you have the peace of mind that putting this together will do. It's inexpensive and it's easy. I hope you will use this checklist in conjunction with consulting with your professionals. You've heard from legal advisors, you've heard from medical professionals in our congregation as you put this together. So as you look at this checklist, please consult with your medical professionals, your financial professionals, your legal professionals. Bring it with you and ask questions. Often those professionals will have lists of their own, so please use this checklist as a starting place, but it does not take the place of professional advice that you have with the people who you work with. So let their work be the final advice. This is a starting place, and I hope it will be useful to you. So how can we put this together? It's inexpensive and it's easy. Some of us might have filing cabinets at home. That is a great place to start. Some of us might use a desk that has a file drawer. That works as well. What we need to do is organize these vital documents into one place that's easily identifiable and it's one-stop shopping for our loved ones. I advise you to label them and make it bold. Like this. Put it neon if you've got neon. So if you don't have that filing cabinet already set, I recommend a banker's box like this. Very inexpensive. You can get it at any big box store or any office supply store. A box like this is great because you can use those hanging file folders and put manila file folders within it. If you already have a file cabinet or a desk at home, invest in brightly colored folders. Pick your favorite color and make that color the home of your vital documents. Now you can drop those documents in as you go, or as in a one-time document like a living will or a last will and testament. You can do it once and done. And the last most important thing to do for it as you go, these things are, going back to putting them in, these things are easy to do, and you can do it either in 30-minute increments once a week. I know this looks like a big job because this checklist is pretty long, but it doesn't have to be an overburden. When you do routine things like, say, pay your monthly insurance or pay your monthly utility bills, drop a copy or just 1 month's worth into your vital documents file. That way you'll have a sample of it in for your loved ones and your survivors when they have to manage your estate. When you do a big thing like your last will and testament or your power of attorney, make a copy of it and send along. I think the most important thing that we all tend to overlook, that I want to emphasize very much, is if you look in the personal section of that checklist, secured places and passwords. Many of us do things online now, and we've gone paperless. The thing I've seen most often that loved ones miss when they're managing our estates is passwords and secured locations. So please think of this. Make a master list of all your passwords in your online accounts. Put it in one place and send it to the person who holds your power of attorney or your loved ones along a copy of all of these documents. And if you have a place like a safe deposit box, make sure that there's the person who is your power of attorney or your executor not only has the key to that, but has the location. When I was doing preparation for this talk, I read that there's an example of a son who got a very carefully prepared envelope with a safety deposit box from his mother after she passed, but along with the key, the mom did not mention which bank it belonged to. It really happened. So please don't overlook important information like that. Lastly, remember to back up. Keep all your original documents at home and put important things like wills and testaments in your lawyer's office if you need it, and living wills in your physician's office. But please, please back up. Make a complete copy of everything, send it to each of your children, and make sure the person who is your executor of your estate has all of those things. Think about what they need to go through to manage your affairs, close down your house, close down your accounts. This is your superpower. You can make life easy for them, and you can make sure that they can manage all of your affairs and honor your wishes. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. In my almost 20 years as a pastor, funerals are probably the thing that I have done the most. And I would say the majority, the families are left, well, we don't really know what our family member would like for the funeral service. So this is the part where I get to tell you, plan what you want for your funeral service. Meaning, what type of hymns? And if you're not sure, Deacon Tom, raise your hand back there. He's a great source for music. We also came up with a list of hymns. I didn't bring that, but if you're interested, I can surely bring some copies. There's a list of funeral hymns. You know, there's the old standards, On Eagle's Wings, How Great Thou Art, but maybe there's some other hymns that you like. Jot them down so you know what you would like sung, how you would like to be remembered, and also Bible passages. Maybe some of you don't know the Bible very well, but you know, well, this is something that I like. I, of course, have a list, and I help the family, but how nice if you have, just as you have all these other documents prepared, if you have listed hymns and scripture readings, so then the family doesn't have to guess, and the pastor doesn't just have to say, oh, this sounds good, but make sure that is a part of your documents as well. Also, I think the vast majority of you are members here at Atonement. Would you like your service, your funeral to be held here rather than at the funeral home? The funeral home is perfect to have one, but if you grew up in this place, if this place has meaning, make sure you note that as well. Where you want your service. And you can list the specific pastor, but in my opinion, it's better to just say the church, because we know pastors come and go. Sure, sometimes we wish they would stay forever, and I've had people ask me, well, if you leave this church, can you do my funeral? That is not the practice that happens, right? It's the same thing if your doctor retires, you don't get to say to them, hey, Dr. Ken, could you still be my doctor even though you're leaving? No, I'm retiring. Same thing. So it's better to just say Atonement Lutheran Church, the funeral home knows how to get in touch with Atonement, and then I can guarantee, like I said, I've been a pastor almost 20 years, and I don't even know how many funerals I've done. Even if the pastor doesn't know you, they are able to talk about your life and also give you that promise, give your family the promise that we know to be true, right? That death is not the final answer. We know that we are going to heaven, that there is life after death. And any pastor is able to do that. Sure, they may not have that personal touch that the pastor who knew you did, but that's why they meet with your family and talk about you and what you did. And you have it all written down in a nice sheet or two, what you want, what you did. I've had some people have their obituaries already done. So that gives, yep, George laughed, yeah. Some write that out themselves because they don't want to have to leave that to their family as well. And they want people to know certain things about their life. And that may be a hard thing to do, to write your own obituary, but it's also something that will help your family, your loved ones when you're gone. Trying to convince God to get in? No, George, we've talked about this. We all get into heaven. So it doesn't matter how good your obituary is or how well your documents are prepared. Jesus gives all of us that gift. Does anyone have any questions about that? Or just questions about this whole series? Yes, Chuck. So the funeral service is where the body or the ashes are present. A memorial service is, say, that you had to be buried quickly, and then you're doing the service in the church or in the funeral home. So that's the difference between a funeral is that the person is physically present as a body or as ashes. Memorial service is after the fact that they have been interred. Sure. So Chuck is asking, he and his wife have decided to donate their bodies to science. So yes, you eventually, the family will get your ashes back when you donate to science. But, oh, is it 2 years? Yes. So in that case, you would do a memorial service shortly after the time of death. Correct. Yep. So that would be something that would be worth noting, right? Remember, you don't need to, you could say, I'm okay with you doing a service for me without my ashes present. Because, as Rachel said, the family is grieving, and it's hard to think about all of those details. So if you can write down as many details as possible, that's helpful. I saw someone else's hand. Eve.
How important is it to allow the family to make some of those choices?
Eve asked, how important is it the family to make some of those choices? Well, the one thing that I do is I say, would anyone like to do a reading? Would anyone like to do a eulogy or speak or read a poem? So that is where I think your family gets to have a say, or the pastor or the, whoever is there planning it. But really all the other details, and of course the family could say, well, I really like this reading too. Sure, we can add that in, or a hymn. So, I don't think you need exactly all the pieces, but there are definitely ways that the family can give some input and add some of their pieces as well. Is that helpful? Sure, you want to leave. Yes, and it's true that the funeral is for the living, right? They're for those, But I think so often families want to honor their loved one. They say, well, what would my mom would have wanted? I'm not really sure because I live in a different state, or I'm not worshiping with her. So I think that's important for them to know what you would have wanted, and then they can add their 2 cents in as well. Yeah, Ken?
Would you discuss the commendation of the dying?
Sure. The commendation of the dying is something that happens as you're nearing death. That is something, and sometimes people think that's a Catholic thing, but no, in the Lutheran Church as well, we have what's called a commendation of the dying. If you know that death is near, then the pastor can come in and pray over you, and whoever is there present. So if that is something that you would like to have happen, you note that as well in your paperwork. You tell your loved ones, you tell your power of attorney, or whoever will be working on those affairs. Hospice is good with that. Especially now at the Highlands, we have a Lutheran chaplain, Chris Summy, and she does that piece. So hospice is also another place. When we know that death is imminent, that's also a place where the pastor and chaplain can be tied in and make sure that you have those prayers and that preparation before you go. Sharon. Sure. So Sharon, for those of you who weren't able to hear her talking about an instance that she found in that the husband wanted his body donated to science, and the wife knew that, but it was coming time to the end, and she wasn't ready and comfortable with doing that, so she went against his wishes. This is why it's important to talk about it now, when you're not on death's door, when you're healthy, when you know, never know when our last day is, but we need to have these conversations and to say to our loved ones, this may not be what you want to do, but please honor my wishes. If you want your body donated to science, then you have it written out and you sign it in front of someone that can be a witness, a notary. Then it's there in your papers, excuse me, letting your family know, yes, of course, maybe you don't want to do that, but this is what your loved one wants, and you have to respect that. Yeah, Chuck.
If you have an advance directive that specifies your request, isn't the person who has power of attorney obligated to follow that?
Yes, I would think so, right? And perhaps that wasn't written down in those advance directives. Those are often things that aren't there. So the more specific you can be about those in your papers, the better. So there's not room for the family to then say, well, maybe they didn't really mean that, or this seems better to me. But no, we are honoring our loved ones' wishes because we have them right here on this paper telling us what we need to do.
And that would be the same in terms of memorial service?
Yes, they're legal, it's probably different, it's but sure, if you have that all written down, then yes, Here's an instance. My grandmother, who helped raise me, she had it all listed out, handwritten, and in big, bold letters, so no one could get it wrong. Katie will do the funeral. I had just had a baby 3 weeks prior, but in big, bold letters, this woman who helped raise me wrote, Katie will do my funeral. Guess what? 3 weeks after having a baby, I got on the plane and I did her service because I knew that's what she wanted. Even though I was grieving and I was a new mother, I knew that that was what she wanted, so I did it. And if you have that in writing, your family will do that. And if they're struggling, I've had instances where families aren't so sure that they want to do, and I remind them, you can still do this, what they want, and still have what you want and honor them. So there's also a lot of that. And maybe you note that too. Please be in touch with the church and the pastor to help you through. That's why we're here. That's what we do, to walk through the journey with your loved ones, because it's not an easy thing. And yet we get to say at the same time, know that your loved one is at peace and at rest with Jesus. I think that's ultimately what the pastor can give that the family needs to hear. Rest easy. Your loved one is okay. We have maybe time for one more question if anyone has one. Right, so Bill is just saying, like what I had said earlier, that even if the pastor did not know your loved one, when his wife died, he was not involved here at this church, but called and spoke with the pastor, met with him. It was Pastor Summy, you said, for an hour, got to share stories and who she was, and the next day did the service, and he said, you would have thought that he knew her forever. So that's our job. You can entrust that to us and know that we will honor your loved one and give them a proper send-off.
In planning out these arrangements and things, of course you want your offspring to have copies, your relatives copies, funeral homes. Would it be indicated to give the church a copy of your desires?
Sure. Chuck is saying, would it be helpful to give the church a copy of your desires? Yes, it would. We had started a file and then we couldn't find, but we could start a file with people listed and what they want, because then we have a physical copy and that makes it a lot easier for us. Sure. So when you're doing your documents, we don't need all the other documents, but what you would want for your funeral service would surely be something that we could hold here at Atonement. Well, I thank you all for coming. A special thanks to Dr. Ken for setting this up. I think in our society, death isn't something that we like to talk about, but it's something that we need to talk about. So hopefully these 7 weeks have just been an opening to talk about death and what you need to do for yourself and for your loved ones. And if you go home and you have any questions, reach out to Dr. Ken, myself, or any staff here at Atonement, and we will be happy to help you as you continue this journey of ending well and joining the saints in light. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks for gathering us together, for reminding us that we do not walk this journey alone, and also for reminding us that death is not the end. Yet instead, death is the beginning of new life in you. Help us as we go from this place. Give us the strength to prepare as much as we can, and also to put our faith and our hope and our trust in you, for you will see us through. In Jesus' name, amen.
At one point, I had nothing, and it was like, oh, it's fine. It's not their party. It's well, that's it. You know, every day, and I thought, Donna's probably wondering, I'm not thanking her. No, I see you today. It's like she's doing well. So yesterday, I'm hoping to see you. Yeah, I know. Good morning. Welcome back. Yes. It's not on. Who is Michelle? No, she's not going to be here. This is not. What about Joanna and Andrea? Andrea's where Feldman's are. Yeah.